നടിയും ആക്ടിവിസ്റ്റുമായ മീന കന്ദസാമിയുമായി നടത്തിയ അഭിമുഖം കേൾക്കാം ടോക്ക് ഓണിൽ. അവതരണം നുസൈബ ബായ്, സെക്ഷൻ ഓഫീസർ സുവേഗ.
Welcome to today's special episode of Talk On. We have the esteemed Meena Kandasamy joining us. Meena is a critically acclaimed Indian writer, poet and translator, known for her powerful and evocative works of feminism, caste and social justice. Her writings have been widely prized for its lyricism and depth. Let's welcome Srimati Meena Kandasamy to the show. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you for having me here with you. It gives me great pleasure.
Madam, welcome to Kerala, the God's own country. And how's your experience in Kerala?
I think every time I come to Kerala, it feels like homecoming for me because I have, 4 or 5 books translated in Malayalam, and I also have a massive readership in Kerala than anywhere else in India. So, when I come here, I always connect with readers, and a lot of them are young students, so I feel very special. But I also have to say this, that Kerala is the only place where people will recognize you in the bus stand or the railway station and say that I read your work. And for me it's amazing because in Tamil Nadu you get recognized, but you are recognized because somebody saw you on TV. You know what I mean? But here they know your work, and I think that is testament to a very rich reading culture and a high literary culture. So it's always the writer in me is very happy to come here.
You are a feminist, you are an activist for social justice, and at the same time you are a writer. How do you navigate the complexities of identity, privilege and oppression?
So I think for me these three are very interconnected. If I was not a feminist, I would not give so much importance to writing. For me it's very organic, it's very natural, because I always think that writing is very male dominated. And more than the fact that it's male dominated, I feel that when men write something, it's taken very seriously. But when women say something, or even better, or even more sharper, there is a tendency to just ignore them. And we also live in a culture where it doesn't matter whether it's writing or science, or people always look at how you look and not what you say. Whereas men always escape that, right? Like they don't have the trap. So for me, my writing makes me more of a feminist because I come across all these problems. And my feminism makes me more of a writer because I realize that, the voices of women, the space of women are taken away. And it's not just a very, very blanket ban. They are fine. I think there are some spaces where people are fine with women. Like if you talk about cooking, they're fine. If you talk about makeup tutorials, they're fine. But if you talk about raising children or motherhood, little fine. But if you talk about politics, you talk about the state, you talk about how to organize people, or you talk about all of these complex things, the more intellectual you get, the more they don't want to listen to women, because these are seen as very male domains. So for me, it is, having to navigate this is not very easy, but I have managed to do it, and I keep doing it. And the question on privilege is again a very interesting question, because when you start writing, you have no idea who you're going to write to, whether you're going to find an audience, whether you're going to find a publisher, whether you even have talent, and whether anybody wants to listen to you. So these are like big complex questions that worry you. But I think after 20 years of writing, at some point you come to this either conclusion or confidence that okay, I have readership, that I have an audience, I have a voice. And I think the minute you have this confidence mechanism, you also realize that you have a lot of responsibility. You cannot talk trash. You cannot go and outrage about everything. And even if you're outraging about something, you have to give a theoretical basis for it. You have to explain yourself. And I think that at some point you earn your privilege, but at the other hand, you also have to exercise that privilege very carefully. So, I think it's a very delicate but very essential balancing act.
How does your Tamil heritage influence your writing and worldview?
This is something I always think to myself, because when you're writing, you don't want to be a Xerox copy. You don't want to be an imitation, right? You don't want to say the same things that some other person is saying. You want to say something unique, because otherwise what's the point of, writing existing? And some of that, for me, I think Tamil has that space. I mean, some of the writing is urgent. So if it's a political issue, if it's a pressing people's issue, you talk about it. But how do you have a unique take on things? Like what informs you? So obviously, in many ways I'm a Marxist, like I am a leftist person and my worldview is shaped by those things. But I'm also shaped by, it's not just blindly borrowing a concept from somewhere. I'm also shaped by the fact that, Tamil culture and literature stands for, at the heart of it, there's a lot of talk about equality. There's a lot of space for women. Women have been writers even in the Sangam era, which is like 2,500 years ago. So it's something that empowers you. And at the time, they were not just, writing just love poems. Not that love poems are less, but they were writing poems about war. They were writing poems about conflict. And there are evidence, so if you look at the, Purananuru poems, from 2,000 years ago, Sangam poetry, there are poems where Avvai is actually giving advice to the king. So the poet is the advisor for the king. And I think that's very important, that kind of power exists for women, And therefore I think that, I find great courage in being a Tamil. But often it's not only the courage, right? On the one hand, it's the past, but on the other hand, it's also, I think, a reaction to what is happening today. And today you find invariably that there is a hegemony of uncles. That it's like I'm talking about Tamil uncles. I'm sure there's an equivalent in Kerala, but uncles decide what society should be, what should go ahead, what is right, who gets to philosophize, who gets to theorize, who gets to translate. And then you are like, no, but at some point you have to do this pushback against uncles, because uncles come with their own worldview and their moral codes, So you really have to, being Tamil is not only a matter of pride, but it's also a matter of pushback and fighting against saying, no, you should hear me,
How do you see your writings as a form of cultural translation or bridge building?
I'm not sure how much my writing is cultural translation per se. I have not looked at it like that. That's quite interesting that, you frame it like that. But I also think that, even in the same culture, there are some things that are not spoken about, right? Like, for instance, we live in a culture where people don't talk about violence. They don't talk about domestic violence. So even if you write to an Indian English audience in English, you're talking about something that there's an empty space. So you're writing into that void. So I think you have to reclaim that space for yourself. I think that I have worked on the Tirukural, and I'm also translating some of the Sangam poetry. And I think there it's very important that, sometimes we all get subsumed under this Indian identity. And the Indian identity is an identity that's in flux. It can be captured. It can be used for hegemonic purposes. It can be used to give a unitary idea of what is India, Indian, which is invariably often Hindi or Sanskrit. So sometimes when you talk about, the Tamil experience or the Tamil world or the Tamil lived worldview, I think that you're doing something counter-hegemonic. You're trying to claim that space. And I think that's what I'm doing. But it's much more through my translation work.
പ്രശസ്ത എഴുത്തുകാരിയും ആക്ടിവിസ്റ്റുമായ മീന കന്ദസ്വാമിയുമായി നടത്തിയ അഭിമുഖമാണ് ടോക്ക് ഓണിൽ ഇതുവരെ കേട്ടത്. അവതരണം നുസൈബ ബായ്.